Hello, and welcome to an analysis of Louise Farrenc's Cello Sonata in B-flat. This video is for my graduate level theory class final project and will involve analysis of harmony, melody, form, or just anything else that I find interesting. Louise Farrenc was a French composer who lived from 1804 to 1875, which places her squarely in the Romantic period. Born Jeannie Louise Dumont, her father, Jacques-Aimé Dumont, was a prominent sculptor in Paris. She studied piano from a young age, and when it became clear that she had real skills as both a pianist and composer, she began studying composition at the Paris Conservatory at only 15 years old. It has unfortunately been lost to history whether or not she was allowed to participate in normal class meetings, as at this time, the class was open to only men. In 1821, she married Aristide Farrenc. He was a flautist, and together they would tour Europe as soloist and accompanist. Once they tired of the touring life, they returned to Paris, and together the two opened Editions Farrenc, which was one of the most important Paris-based publishers of their time. While living in Paris, she also gained a reputation as a performer and was able to obtain the professor of piano position at the Paris Conservatory. One of my favorite Louise Farrenc facts is that when she was working at the conservatory, she wrote a nonet, and it had a very successful premiere. And based on this success, she demanded equal pay to her male colleagues at the conservatory. And much to my surprise, based on what we know about women's rights in the 1800s, she actually got it. As a composer, she wrote tons of music, including but not limited to 3 symphonies, many vocal and choral works, chamber music, and a whole load of piano music. Overall, I think Louise Farrenc is a highly underrated Romantic composer, and you should give her a listen. So now let's take a look at the form of Farrenc's Cello Sonata, Opus 46, in B-flat. And today we'll be looking at only the second movement of her Cello Sonata in B-flat, because otherwise the video would be very long. So in the second movement here, we have what looks like a sonata form, but with no development. So why and how is this a thing? Well, let's first look at a little form map that I made. So in rather typical fashion, it's the Cello Sonata in B-flat. So the first movement is in B-flat. Now the second movement is in the subdominant key of E-flat. Fairly normal activity so far. So we have an A section in E-flat, a B section where we modulate directly to B-flat, a C section where we modulate down a major third to G-flat. It's sort of interesting how we get there. We'll take a look at it later. We have a short retransition in E-flat minor, also an interesting spot that we'll take a look at later. And then we're back in our home key of E-flat. Then we have a B section, also in our home key of E-flat. We don't modulate this time. Then in our second C section, we modulate down a major third one more time, but this time instead of B-flat to G-flat, we have E-flat to C-flat. And then a little coda to end it off where we end in E-flat major. So I like to think of these two parts as two distinct sections, where we could just call the first ABC one big A and the second ABC one big B, or, since this is very reminiscent of a sonata form without a development, it's just an exposition and a recapitulation, we'd call this sonatina form. It's just a short little sonata. No development. And having the second movement be a full sonata form would also be very repetitive, because the first movement is the whole sonata form with all of the bits that come along with that. So let's take a look at the form just with some actual sheet music before us real quick. We have our first A section, where the piano presents the thematic material. Then you can see here we modulate directly to B-flat major. Then we're moving down a major third into our first C section, G-flat major. Now A comes back, we're back in E flat. Here's B again, but we stay in the home key. Then we're down a major third again to C flat major. And then the coda, and then it's done. So it's just a nice simple little sonatina form. No need to overthink it, it's very easy to do so. I certainly did. Now let's look at some points of this piece that I find particularly interesting, and we get in the weeds pretty quick. So let's give it a listen here, right from the top. Okay, so we're already stopping because she's already setting up an important theme for the entire piece. And I don't just mean the main melody, which is, you know, the theme, but some thematic material she uses here in the second measure. This is the first example for the whole piece of a 9/8 suspension. So this is important because through this whole piece, she uses chains of various types of suspensions. You can see in a few bars, we get a 4/3 suspension. And then if we take a look a few bars later, we're back. And this is a real chain of suspensions where she does that idea for the first time. So let's give the whole first 8 bars a listen now. And keep your ear out for those chains of suspensions. There's some really nice call and response between cello and piano here. Here we go. And a nice sort of deceptive cadence with 5 of 2 going to 2. Then we're right back to E flat quick. And here's the chains of suspensions again. And I made a small mistake in my markings. The suspension part is actually in the cello this time. And you can see the cello and right-hand piano, they're in thirds the entire time, which I think gives it a real nice sound. Now let's take a quick look at the B section. Let's start just a measure or 2 back so we can get into the B section. So just like that, we're in B flat. Just a direct modulation, no messing around with it, just here we are. So now let's go over our transition into G flat major. Let's keep going. Here's something really important right now. right there. The borrowed minor 4 chord helps to set us up for our transition to G flat. Because to borrow minor 4, we have to use a G flat. And here we go. So she makes what you would think to be a pretty jarring move pretty smooth. I think she does it by just moving the bass note of the piano here down just a half step. To me, the half step isn't jarring. And then we take the cello down to A flat to make a D flat chord, which is 5 in G flat. So with just a few small movements like this, she has upset the key center in a very smooth way, which will help us end up down a third from where we're at right now, which is B flat down to G flat. And the G flat does bring us the C section. Now let's listen to C just a little bit, because she brings back this overarching thematic material of chains of suspensions. And I wrote that wrong. That's a mistake on my part. That should say 9-8, not 2-1. There we go. I've done it again. Okay, let's keep going. Here they are. And there it is, just like that. It's our chain of suspensions again. Now let's continue on with the retransition, which is one of my favorite parts of this whole movement. In the retransition, starting here, we'll go around the circle of fifths in E flat minor, and then we'll end up here back at the A section. Now you might be thinking, it's just a circle of fifths, how is that the most interesting part of this piece? Well, I think she does a lot of interesting things in this little section here. The first is that these dotted quarter notes in the piano, they always have the 7th of the chord. And because this is the circle of fifths progression, everything's just a, dominant of the next change. So we can make anything a 7 chord that we want to, which is another thing that gives this section a really awesome sound. Let's give it a listen. And here we are. Three, 6, 2, 5, 1. And I love these octaves right here. To me, those octaves are... It's just sort of a Beethoven type sound. It's hard to describe. Obviously, Beethoven isn't the, he didn't invent octaves, but it's just reminiscent of his style for some reason to me. Let's just go back a few measures and listen to that again. Now we're highlighting 5 for quite a while here, because after all this is said and done, we're back at A in our home key of E flat major. And here we are with our main thematic material in the cello, with a nice little counter melody in the piano. And in just a second here, we'll hear those suspensions again. There it is. So now let's give the new B section a little listen. It's not very different. It's just this it's mostly the same as before, with some small differences, including that it's in the home key of E flat major. Let's start a few measures before. Oh, it's this again. You tired of it yet? Me either, it sounds good. So this time, another important difference is, instead of the cello playing the main theme of the B section, it's just the piano. And I love how the high-up counter melody in the right hand of the piano gives this section a nice light feel. I love these octaves. Used sparingly, octaves are a powerful tool. And now we're almost at the new C section, and she does the exact same thing as before. Except this time, from E flat down to C flat. Very similar, pedal tones in the cello, another 9/8 suspension that I incorrectly labeled. And now we're just in E flat minor for just a moment while we get to our coda in E flat major. You could actually say that the coda starts here, where I've marked it with a little star. More of these. And I love this new rhythmic material in the coda. And I love this chromatic motion and how it gets picked back up by the cello. And there's the end of the piece. There's so much more we could have gone over. This is one of those pieces that sounds deceptively simple on the surface, but the more you look at it, just the more and more you uncover. And there's just little things that you could go over all day with this piece. And it's one that I've really grown to enjoy this a lot. So that'll be it for me. Thank you so much for watching.